Hello students. So in the last session we have discussed about the asexual reproduction. Now in this session we are going to discuss about the sexual reproduction, and after that we will be discussing about the sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Okay. So what do you mean by sexual reproduction? So this is a mode of reproduction in which the new individuals are formed from two parents. So that is the key word. In the asexual reproduction, we have learned that it is the reproduction. Okay, it is a mode of reproduction where only one parent is involved. But here, two parents are involved. So the sex is involved. The fusion between male and female gamete give rise to the new organism. So these new individuals are not identical to that of parent. So these are the keywords when they are asking you to write a question. Say for example a 5-mark question about the sexual reproduction. Then you should give a small introduction about what is a sexual reproduction, and then you can start your answers. So here new individuals are not identical to that of the parent. Then what's going to be the result? Definitely variations will be present. So lots of variations will occur. And this is relatively slower mode of reproduction. 1, 2 parents, fusion of gamete, and here it is not identical, variation occur, slower mode of reproduction. These are the key words about the sexual reproduction. Then what is the advantage of the sexual reproduction? Because when they are asking you a question, they won't just ask you to write, explain about sexual reproduction and all. They'll just ask you what is sexual reproduction and what are the advantages of sexual reproduction which you are considering, or according to you what are the advantages. So like that they will be asking certain questions. Okay. So the advantages of sexual reproduction is: 1, to incorporate variations in species, which in turn ensures survival of a species. So if it is asexual reproduction, then all are going to be similar. We will have only slight variation. But when it comes to sexual reproduction, we can see more variation. If there is more variation, that will ensure the survival of a species. Then each individual in a species has its own uniqueness and identity, isn't it? Yes, say yes or no. Because I am not similar to that of you, isn't it? And even you are not similar to that of your parents. So each and every organisms are very unique. Okay. And then the next point, they enable the organism to survive under unfavorable condition. If there is any variation in the organism, this will help the organism to live in the unfavorable condition. Clear? Okay. Now let's talk about the gametes. Okay. Because when we are talking about the sexual reproduction, the gametes are playing a very important role. First, the gametes are also known as the sex cells. So in some organism, the male and female gametes are going to be identical to each other. They look similar. Okay. Then you will call them as isogamy. Okay. Then you will call them as what? Iso means same. Gamete. So the gametes look similar. So the example for this is Spirogyra. While in some others, the male and female gametes are different from each other. Okay, the male and female is different from each other. That is anisogamy. An means absence of. Iso, okay, it's not similar. Say for example, the male gamete in human being is like this. It's a sperm. And the female gamete in human being is like this, isn't it? So the female egg or the ovum. So the male gamete is motile because it has flagellum here. So it is motile, and the female gamete helps in food storage. So the fusion of male and female gamete is known as fertilization, and that will result in formation of a zygote. You should know the terminology, student. When I am saying fusion of male and female gamete, the process is fertilization. After that, these fusion results in the formation of zygote. Then the zygote will divide 2 cell, 4 cell, 8 cell, like that it will divide, and finally it will develop into a new organism. Okay, so that is about the gametes. Then we will see sexual reproduction in plants. Okay, in this session I am going to complete sexual reproduction in plants, and in the next session we will be doing sexual reproduction in human beings and the reproductive health together. Okay, so sexual reproduction in plants. The flower is the reproductive organ of a plant. Okay, so which is the reproductive unit? The flower. All these things like root, stem, leaf, or vegetative factors. Okay, that is the vegetative factor. Only the reproductive part is the flower. Certain flowers are unisexual. Either male, female reproductive part is present in it. Uni means single. Okay, it has only one sex. Say for example a papaya plant, male papaya and a female papaya plant is there, isn't it? So each end, if anything, either it may have a male or a female. That is unisexual plant. So like us, isn't it? Even in human beings also you can see female has ovary and male has testis. So similarly in the male plant it is going to have an anther, and the female plant is going to have the gynoecium. Okay, so that is unisexual. But in certain plants like China rose, okay, in hibiscus and all, you can see both male and female reproductive part will be present in the same flower. That is bisexual. So even it has androecium and also gynoecium. The androecium, that is the male part, and the gynoecium, that is the female part, will be present in both the organism. Okay, that is bisexual. Then sexual versus asexual reproduction in plants. Students, I am just exposing you to various types of questions. Since you people are going to write the public examination, I am just focusing more each and every topic towards the questions, because they might ask you what is the difference between sexual and asexual reproduction in plants. Okay, so here asexual reproduction, it is easier one and the faster mode of reproduction. We have seen many things, isn't it? Fission, budding, grafting, cutting, layering. So all these things are even spore formation or asexual. The desired traits can be preserved through generation. You would have already learnt in heredity and evolution law of segregation. In the asexual reproduction you couldn't have law of segregation, which means the desired character won't segregate. Okay, won't segregate, but in sexual reproduction the desired character will segregate. Say for example your desirable character is this one. Okay, this one, that is capital T and small t. This is a hybrid heterozygous. Your desirable character is this one. But during the sexual reproduction, when you are doing the selfing, okay, you couldn't expect only this character to come to the progeny. No. So either this character capital T can come, or as per your wish capital T small t can also come, or small t can also come. So when you are saying during the sexual reproduction your desirable trait couldn't be preserved, okay, because it can be segregated, but in the asexual reproduction definitely this can be, say for example this plant, okay, from the leaf of a plant I am going to get another plant, then definitely that character is going to be maintained. Okay, here no sex is involved. The new plants formed are genetically identical to that of the parent, but the problem is they are not going to have variation, that they are susceptible or prone to diseases. no genetic variation. Okay, that is about the asexual reproduction in plants. Then sexual reproduction. They are relatively slower mode of reproduction. The genetic variations are seen and less prone to diseases because it is having variation. If an organism is having variation, then definitely it has a chance to survive in the new environment, but it is a slower mode of reproduction. Okay, yeah. So now I have told you the reproductive structure of a plant is a flower, so that you should know clearly about the structure of a flower. So in the flower you can see a stalk over here. The stalk is the one which holds the flower, or else you can call it as a pedicel. Then thalamus. The thalamus is the swollen upper part here. This portion is the thalamus. Then you can see the colored petals. Okay, petals, stalk. Then above the stalk we have thalamus. Then you can see the petals, also known as corolla. Then sepals. Okay, can you see the sepals here, students? This green color one. You know, this green color one underneath the petals. That will actually initially protects the bud. Okay, initially protects the flower bud. That is nothing but the sepal. Okay, or calyx, and this is corolla or petal. Then the male part in the flower is the stamen, the male reproductive organ which is going to produce the male gamete, that is pollen grain. Then carpel, the female reproductive organ which produce the female gametes. So if they are asking you to explain the structure of a flower, please do remember that you have to give topics: stalk, thalamus, petal, sepal, stamen, carpel, like that. So stamen male part and carpel is the female part. Then just draw a simple diagram like this and you can explain. This is the stamen, this is the female part. Okay, the female part, here you can see stigma, this is style, and this one is ovary. These three things together comprises of a carpel. I am repeating it again: stigma, style, ovary. These three things together comprises of a carpel or else a pistil. Okay. Then the stamen has a filament and a anther. The filament, anther together comprises of a stamen. A group of stamens is known as androecium. Okay, students. Yeah. Now, so here the stamen and the pistil are the reproductive parts of a flower. So the stamen is the male reproductive part and it produces pollen grains in the anther. So you can see that here, students, as I have told you, this is a stamen. The stamen comprises of a filament and this part is the anther. Okay, this is the stamen. Filament, anther together is known as stamen. So here you can see anther and filament together constitute the stamen. Then female part, I have told you, this part is stigma, this is style, and this is ovary. Inside the ovary, ovule is present. Okay, ovule is present with embryo sac. And these three things together is known as pistil. Okay, this is stamen and this is pistil, and this is vegetative part. Okay, like sepal, it's just going to protect, and this is receptacle or thalamus. That is about the structure of a flower. Okay, then the male reproductive structure in a flower is nothing but the stamen. So the stamens are the male reproductive structure, and I have told you it is going to consist of three things. One is filament. This filament is nothing but a stalk. You can see here. Okay, this is just a stalk that bears this anther. Okay, so this anther is bilobed structure. It has two lobes, and you can see each lobe is going to have a pollen sac. each lobe, okay, I am just taking a section of it, okay, and each lobe will have a pollen sacs. So each lobe has 2 sacs, so there are totally 4 pollen sacs are present in the anther, and each sac will produce spores, and these spores or the pollen mother cell later develop into pollen grains. So when they are asking you about the male reproductive structure, you should mention about the filament, then about the anther. In the anther, you should say that it is bilobed in structure and each lobe has 2 pollen sac. So totally there are 4 pollen sac, and this pollen sac is going to develop the spores, and from that the pollen grains, that is nothing but the male gamete, is going to be formed. Then connective, that is just a part attached to the back of a anther, okay, that is connectives. So these are the 3 things which we have to explain about the male reproductive structure of a flower. Then female reproductive structure in a flower, as I have told you, it is carpel. This carpel has 3 parts: stigma, style and ovary. Okay, here you can see this is the stigma, and this part is the style, and this one is the ovary, and inside the ovary you can see the ovule with embryo sac. Okay, so this ovary is enclosed part of carpel, and the ovarian cavity is termed as locule. Okay, say for example, if this is the ovary, this cavity is known as locule. Okay, these ovules are attached to a cushion like structure. Say for example, a cushion like structure. Okay, this is the ovarian cavity, a cushion like structure, and this is the ovule. Okay, so this is the ovule and this is the locule. Locule is the cavity and this is the ovule, and this cushion like structure is the placenta. Okay, that is about the ovary. Then the style. The style is a tube like structure that connects the ovary and stigma. So here we have the ovary and here we have the stigma, and style is a tube which is connecting both stigma and ovary. Then stigma is located at the exposed end of style, and it acts as the receptive surface for pollen grains. Okay, so I will explain that, students. So here you can see, as I have told you, this is a female part, this is a male part. So from this the pollen grains has been released. Okay, this pollen grain will come and attach it to this part of the stigma. I will just zoom one pollen grain. So it will be like this with 3 cells, okay, with the gametes. Slowly this pollen grain will develop a pollen tube with the gametes in it. That male gamete will come and combine here. Okay, this is the egg cell. One gamete will come to the egg cell and this will develop into an embryo. Initially zygote, then embryo, embryo into seed. And for this growing embryo, the center part, okay, this one, here one more, actually 3 nucleus came, isn't it? One nucleus will do the fusion here and the other nucleus will do the fusion here. Okay, that is primary endosperm cell. This will develop into endosperm. This endosperm will provide nourishment to this growing embryo. Okay, so this is endosperm Actually 3 cells, and this one is the tube nucleus. It will degenerate after it reaches here, and these 2 male gamete, one gamete will fuse here in the egg cell. Okay, the center one is the egg cell. One gamete will fuse with the egg cell. Okay, one male gamete with the egg cell results in the formation of embryo. Another male gamete will fuse in the center, and thereby that will develop into endosperm. Endosperm is the one which will provide nourishment to the growing embryo. Okay, then sexual reproduction in plants, and here we are going to discuss some steps. Sometimes in MCQ they will ask you which step will come first. Okay, so you should know first step, after the gametes formation, that is male gamete and the female gamete formation, then the first step is pollination. Pollination means transfer of the male gamete to the female gamete, that is pollination. Then the second thing is fertilization. Just now we saw, isn't it, the fusion of male and female gamete. And the third step is seed formation, that is from the embryo seed will develop, and finally that seed, when we are putting it into the soil, when the condition is favorable, that will germinate. So these are the 4 main steps in the sexual reproduction in plants. If you want, you can even include gamete formation also. You can explain about the gamete formation, then go for pollination, fertilization, seed formation and germination. Okay, so the first step is pollination. As I have told you, transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower is called pollination. So this can be takes place by, with the help of wind. When wind is doing this, you will call it as anemophily. When water is helping to transfer the male gamete to the female gamete, then you will call it as hydrophily. Or in many cases in the attractive flowers and all, the insect is helping to pollinate, isn't it? That is known as entomophily. Okay, wind anemophily, water hydrophily, insect entomophily. Okay, so pollination is transfer of pollen grains, and I have discussed about various types of pollination also. If the pollen grains are transferred from the anther to the stigma of the same plant, then you will call it as self-pollination. Okay, say for example, this is the same flower. Okay, same flower. Here you can see same flower, anther of the same flower, and this is the stigma, style and ovary of the flower. From here the anther will just stick to this place. So from here to here, this is same flower, that is known as self-pollination. And this one is cross-pollination. Here you can see this is the anther. The pollen grains from this flower will be taken by the insects. Okay, insects, these pollen grains are sticky, so that it will attach it to the body of the insect. When this insect is again sitting on this flower, and it is while sucking the nectar out of the flower, these pollen grains will stick on to this stigma. Okay, the anther from one plant to stigma of another plant by any agent, whether it may be a wind or a water or it may be an insect. That type of pollination is known as cross pollination. Okay, yeah. So that is the first step, pollination. Then the second step is fertilization. So after the pollen grain is transferred to the stigma, it produces a pollen tube which passes through the style and enters the ovary and ovule. So in the ovule, the male germ cell fuses with the female germ cell to produce a zygote. So here you can see, so this is the pollen grain, and when after it has been attached here, that process is known as pollination. After the pollination, the pollen tube is formed, and slowly the male gamete will fuse with the female egg cell. Okay, that is known as fertilization. Zygote will be developed. After that, after that embryo will develop. So after fertilization, the zygote divides several times and forms the embryo. Later on, this embryo will develop into a seed. And you can ask me, what will happen to this ovary then? Yes, this ovary will develop into a fruit, and this ovule which is present inside is going to develop into a seed. So remember this, students, in many examinations they have asked this question. So after the fertilization, what will happen means the ovule will develop into seed. Okay, and what will happen to the ovary? The ovary will develop into a fruit. Okay, yeah. So here you can see, so the pollen grain, male gamete, slowly the pollen tube is developing. This is tube nucleus. As I said, it is going to regenerate, and these two male gametes will come and fuse here. One will fuse here, that is going to develop into zygote and embryo. The other one which fuses, already two cells will be there. So one male gamete, so totally 3N. Okay, already two nucleus, I'm sorry, it's not two cells, it is two nucleus, and then one more nucleus is added now. This will later develop into endosperm. This endosperm will provide nourishment to this embryo. Okay, so that is about the sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Okay, we have seen. So now seed formation. So the zygote divides repeatedly to form the embryo, and then the ovule develops a thick coat and forms a seed, and this ovary is going to ripe into a fruit, and you can see here, students. Okay, this is seed, and the seed may be a monocot or dicotyledonous seed. That is the seed formation. The zygote will divide repeatedly, and this ovule will develop into a seed, and ovary ripens to form fruit. Then finally the last step is germination. So the seed, okay, when a favorable condition is there, okay, normally seeds are in the dormant stage, which means it is living but it is sleeping actually. Okay, so it is dormant stage, and when the condition is favorable, you are putting that seed in the soil and just like watering it, then the seed will develop into a seedling, and you can see a plumule here, plumule part, and these are the cotyledons. This plumule will develop into a shoot, and this radical part will develop into a root. So you can see the seedling here, and from this plant will develop. That is about the germination, development of a seedling from a seed. Okay, so in this session we have clearly discussed about the sexual reproduction in flowering plants. So in that we have seen what is a gamete, okay, and what is how the structure of a flower will be, how the male part will be, and how the female part will be, and we also discussed about various steps in the sexual reproduction in flowering plants, that is how the pollination, then fertilization, and after that zygote formation.